Everyone, I'm Vaughan,
And I'm Anthony.
and this is the start of our creative podcast. We'll be starting with something we're calling character interviews. Basically what this is we give each other 15 prompts pretty much to talk about our characters, and pretty much just let the other guy spiel off for a few minutes until we stop him. So
Yeah. The one I'm going to be interviewing him today about is the character of his named Edahn Nighale. Now, I won't go into talking about his character, so why don't we just get started?
all right, so Edahn, huh? I wasn't expecting Edahn. What's
The first thing I'll ask you is, what is he like physically? Give me a clear picture of who I'm talking about here.
Oh, you want me to visualize him?
Yes.
Okay. He looks like a pretty boy, honestly. In all essence, alright, so he has white hair. It falls down to just right above his neck. Right below his jawline is more what I meant. And he has, the most important thing to know about him physically is his eyes. His right eye is pure ice blue, and his left eye is amber red. So it's two very different colored eyes contrast each other. And because of this, when you look at this guy, you can't tell what he's thinking by looking at his eyes, because it's two completely different emotions within both set of eyes. He has a strong jawline. He has basically a puppy dog nose. And he has a solemn, his lips are in like a solemn grin. It's not like a full-on, smirky smirk, but it's like a solemn grin. It's like, I'm happy, but I'm pissed off about it.
Yeah, he's always been a dry, cut and dry sort of down to the bone humor guy.
Yeah, he's and once you get further down, okay, he's very toned. He's not muscular, but he's cut. He's well defined. Although you rarely ever see the dude out of his usual clothing. He has a lot of scars from all of his trials and tribulations that he goes through his life. One of the most important ones is he has scars on his knuckles from constantly beating things out of just pure rage. Let's see what else I can go into his apparel. So usually the guy is wearing he's wearing just a normal leather cuirass. It's basically a leather gambeson, let's just put it at that, and it's usually over a tattered dark black tunic, and he wears just your regular run-of-the-mill trousers. That is.
I'm sure you history buffs there grimaced at first when you heard leather armor, but
Well, it's in the fantasy concept. I'm sorry, he has to be able to move quickly. He's not wearing chainmail. He's not really a armor wearer. But basically, and he wears, but he wears regular trousers that are padded up by leather, and just regular boots, and he's always wielding either his double-bladed sword, which, yes, again, to you medieval enthusiasts, I know it's a very unorthodox weapon. It's pretty much useless, but in this concept, in this world, it does have its uses, especially when it comes to Edahn. Or he's using his quarterstaff. Or he's using a one-handed sword. He's proficient with a lot of weaponry as he was trained, but he always has the staff or the sword on his back at all times.
all right, let's get on to the next thing.
Oh,
Why don't you give us a view of what his life was like? Like, what's his lifestyle? How does he go about his day?
And what part of his life?
Let's go right in his prime.
Oh boy. Well, in his prime, it's after everything has ended. After the initial conflict, his vengeance has been he's claimed his vengeance, and he's just dealing with the fallout of it.
Yeah.
So in his prime, he's dealing with this thing called it's a faction that calls themselves the Resurgence, and it's the remnants of the original organization that he brought down. Well, he didn't do it himself, but he was the figurehead.
Yeah.
And so he's dealing with the faction called the Resurgence, which is the remnants of the faith, which is the aforementioned faction that I just said he brought down.
Deus Vult Infidel.
So he's basically dealing with radicalists, radical religious folk that want to bring back how things were when the faith ruled over everything. because when the faith did rule over everything, everything was geared towards the religious people. The religious functionaries, they had all the power, they had all the technology. They were the only ones in the world that could use magic at the time without dealing with the 99.9% of mortality rate.
So you would say he doesn't live an average sort of lifestyle whatsoever.
He never, throughout his entire life, he never really lives the lifestyle that he thought he would have when he was a kid. He is fighting pretty much every single day of his life. And in his prime, his normal day is he sleeps 4 or 5 hours a night, gets up at some location, and he has to change locations every few days because he has to just quell these attempts by the resurgence to basically terrorize the world he lives in. His duty is he just wants to protect people. He just wants to keep everyone safe, even though that can't really happen in a war like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the lifestyle he lives in his prime. It's just every day I have to get up, I have to go do this, and I have to fight this person, I have to stop this operation, etc., etc., etc.
And what about, how old is he when he gets to this point in his life where
He is about 40. 40, 45 is 40 to 50 is his prime age. That's when he's lethal. It's really bad. He gets to the point where I'm weary to test a lot of my characters against someone like that.
Yeah, he's very talented, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And where was he born? Where was he raised? What kind of environment brought him into this world as he is?
Oh, you want the origin. Okay. All right, this is sad. Get ready for sad feels. All right, so Edahn was born to just a regular village in the middle of the ass end of nowhere. That's what he was born to. And he was born to the village leader, Tydeus, and a midwife. Which, yes, I know. Again, medieval functionaries. I know. Just go with it, please. Just go with it for the story. I know it's inaccurate. Her name was Lysissa, and he was just born to these two, and he was being raised to become the next village leader. That's what he thought his life was going to be like.
Yeah.
He, from a very young age, people could see that he had a natural talent for learning.
Yeah.
He knew how to read, write, and talk before any other children his age did.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And what's strange about that is in this world, reading and writing was such a strange notion for the common people because technology in itself was completely controlled by the faith.
Well, for any medieval old-based storyline, when you really get down to it, the common folk shouldn't know how to read and write that well.
They really shouldn't. It's not in their prerogative to learn that stuff.
Well,
their prerogative is just to do normal base stuff every day.
They're supposed to learn how to plant crops. They're supposed to learn how to trade and haggle, not learn how to read a bunch of symbols on a piece of paper that's not going to help them through their day.
Right. But as he was the village leader's son, he had to learn that stuff because the village leader does have to know how to do that.
That makes sense.
And so he was taught and he learned, as I said, very fast. He showed a natural talent for learning things. And you flash forward to about 8 years old, and that's when his first burst of heroism came up. This is where you first see his savior syndrome. Now, let me just explain something. His savior syndrome, the Messiah complex, is not as grand scale as it's normally reported in characters. He is literally... It's on a one-by-one basis. He just wants... If there's a situation in front of him where a person is in danger, he will sacrifice everything he is just to make sure that person gets out alive.
Yeah,
Even bad people, he will risk everything to save.
Yeah, it's not a worldview level thing. It's not like a...
He's not trying to manipulate the masses because he believes that he knows what's best for them.
No,
it's not quite that bad.
It's not a maniac level complex.
So this is where he first shows it. It was just a simple fire that broke out in the village, and he basically had to... They were just running water on it. They were just throwing water pails on it, as normal people back then got rid of fires. Yeah. And they thought that the one house that they were working on had nobody in it until a very shrill scream came from within. Mm-hmm. And Edahn knew who that scream was from. It was from his childhood friend, whose name is Cree. And so he rushed in without any hesitation. He dropped the pail of water he had, ignored his father screaming at him, and dashed into a billowing mountain of black smoke coming from this house.
Yes.
And he searched... he searched for Kree and he found him, but the moment he found him, part of the roof collapsed and it came down and the burning end smacked into his lower back and flattened him out and knocked him out. He woke up. His father saved him. His father went and saved both him and Kree. But he woke up and he now has a scar on his back from that. And if it's hit in any way, even way after the fact, it hurts. Like it's permanent nerve damage. It doesn't ever go away.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so we go to age 12. And here's where it starts to get really, really sad. So the problem was the village was so in the ass out of nowhere that it was actually kind of outside the scope of the faith structure.
Yeah.
Until the faith realized, hey, we have to get these people under order. They don't worship Marvel.
Deus Vult Infidel.
Exactly. That's honestly what it was. And what happened was Tydeus, the village leader, Edahn's father, rejected the first missionary. Said, we do not claim our lives to be for that of some god that we don't know.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest mistake he could have made. The next day, Edahn woke to Kree shaking him. Get up, get up, get up, get up. We have to go, we have to go, we have to go. Edahn elbowed him in the face from waking up so suddenly. and at first he's like, oh crap, I'm sorry. And he's barely awake. He doesn't understand why Kree is freaking out. His very first thought is, he's just playing around with me. But once he sees Kree's face and Kree says, my mom told me we have to run. We have to go now. And Edahn, he's still waking up. He still doesn't understand what's going on. So Kree runs, and he doesn't necessarily chase him because he thinks he's just playing around. He stands up from his bed, and he smells smoke coming in because as it just passes his window, some of it pours into his house.
And that's got to be an unforgettable smell. I've heard so many times from soldiers that you never get the smell of burning flesh out of your mind.
Never. Well, he didn't smell the burning flesh yet. Okay. He only smelled the smoke.
Okay.
So, but thanks for spoiling it a little. So since he spoiled a little, basically what happens is, so Edahn goes out into the village, and all he sees is fire. Just fire everywhere. It's covering, and so much smoke is blanketing the air that he can barely see a few feet in front of him. It's like you're in a really, really thick fog, and you can barely see your hand as you put it in front of you. That's how bad and thick it was. So Edahn's so Edahn starts to panic. The only thing he cares about is finding his parents. So he just tries to find his parents. He pushes his way through the smoke. Keep in mind, he does collapse several times in coughing fits. Absolutely awful. Honestly, he really shouldn't have survived through that much smoke inhalation.
No, carbon dioxide poisoning should have probably killed him.
It should have. But it was pure indomitable will that pushed him through all that. And realizes that something is really, really wrong when he steps in a puddle. And he realizes that it hadn't rained that day.
Oof.
And it's warm.
That's a pleasant image. He
steps into it, and he realizes it's warm, and shrieks, jumps back, looks at it, and sees that it's blood caked with mud. So it's like you're walking in a field, in a crop field, and it just rained, and you put your foot down, and it sinks all the way in.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like, except it was warm, and it smelled distinctly like iron.
Yeah. So what was the worst part of it, and how did he survive?
The worst part of it? Honestly, I wouldn't even say... Okay, so the essentiality of it is he finds his parents dead.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the worst part, strangely enough. The worst part of it was he hears his friend scream. And for that entire time until he finds his friend, all he thinks about is, I have to find my friend now. So he goes towards where the scream came from, and he's running now. He's just full out sprinting through this black fog. And he doesn't see where he's going. He's just running towards where he thinks the scream came from until he finally trips over something, tumbles onto the ground, and when he looks up, he sees his friend. His friend was eviscerated. His intestines out. It's gory. It's very gory. But Edahn doesn't understand the concept of death. He doesn't get it. It doesn't really make sense to him.
Yeah, he was still a kid at the time.
So, yeah, he never even had a pet that died. So he doesn't really understand. He's just trying to shake Kree like, hey, we gotta go. We gotta go now.
Yeah, most kids, when they see that, they think that the person is asleep.
Yeah.
And it looks like they're sleeping until you realize something's very wrong, that spark is gone.
Yeah. Well, Kree's eyes were open, so
Yeah.
that was what clued it in, because they were just lifeless. He just looked off into nothingness. And that was the worst part, and that part is stuck with Edahn through all of his life.
Yeah,
And
it's
yes,
good.
the burning flesh does stick with him. He's so, like, a lot of weaknesses stem from this. Obviously PTSD, because this is a horrible, traumatic event for a 12-year-old to go through.
Yeah.
And the PTSD is triggered by burning flesh. Just fire in itself bothers the hell out of him. Even smelling smoke just creeps him out, and he can't stand to be around it.
So how does he get out of this? How does he live?
When he finds his parents, he passes out from the smoke inhalation. He passes out at their feet. And the guy that finds him is another complicated character in itself. His name is Nightingale, and he finds a broken husk of a village completely destroyed by the Faith. He already knows who did it, because he's been fighting the Faith since they came.
Yeah.
And Nightingale finds this little boy, still somehow breathing. It doesn't make any sense, but he's still somehow breathing. And he takes him in. He brings him back home. And Edahn wakes up to find that he's been nursed back to health. And
he's probably ready to stab the dude that saved him.
he was. He attacked him. Because the only thing that he can think was, this guy took me away. He's probably my enemy. So he lashed out at him, despite having no knowledge on how to fight, mind you.
Ooh.
And Gale, pretty much being the experienced guy, has just laid him out. Not in a harsh way, just like pinned him to the ground and said, quit. I'm not your enemy. I took you away from there.
All right.
So that's Nightingale saves him.
So that's his origin, and it's a pretty brutal origin to have, especially going through that so young.
It drastically changes Edahn from what he would have been if that had never happened.
Now, this one will be a little bit more of a difficult question. If you'd say the purpose throughout his entire life, not when he's younger, middle-aged, or older,
Throughout his entire life.
the grand purpose that he has, what would you say it is?
That is a little more difficult. Honestly, I would have to say, this is the one thing I love about Edahn. I love this question. His purpose is, just as I said before, his life would have been drastically different if he hadn't had to go through this. He was just going to be the village leader. That's all he was going to do. He was just going to be a peaceful guy, helping farm, yada, yada, yada. But he didn't get that.
Nope.
And so he realizes that at a very young age, he's like, I could have been this, but now I have to do this, because at the young age, vengeance is consuming him. That's all he wants.
Yeah,
he wants revenge.
All he's going to be is a ball of rage.
And that's what he is for so long. He's just an angry, angry person. But even then, the purpose was, he picks up his sword so that he can save another little boy or another little girl from ever having to go through that. He kills these people.
Yeah, he's pretty noble-hearted, and he's always keeping himself to help. He's trying to work for the benefit of others.
That's all. His purpose is literally just, he picks up a blade so that somebody else doesn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
He just wants to keep people safe from the horrible effects that war can have, the horrible effects that religion can have. And that's all he wants throughout his entire life, all the way up until he dies. That's all he wants for people.
We already heard about his family, but what kind of friends does he have throughout his life?
Well, I didn't describe his whole family. I just described his adopted dad. And I didn't even really describe Nightingale, because again, that's an entirely different story.
Yeah.
Nightingale's a complete and different character all on his own. When we get to him, that's going to be such a complicated podcast. Oh, Lord. Anyway, so he has Nightingale. That's his adopted dad. His adopted dad taught him how to fight.
Yeah.
And from a very young age, Edahn knew. He picked up on everything so easily. Nightingale was even surprised by it.
Yeah.
But, so you have Nightingale, the warrior extraordinaire, archer extraordinaire, the guy who can think so far ahead that you just can't plan against him, the guy who can react so fast that you probably won't win a fight. You won't. He'll hit you before you even think about being hit.
And that's quite the thing to try and measure up to.
Yeah. And then you have Seratona, the feisty little imp girl, who is his adopted mother, who he's actually very close with.
Yeah, she's a lovely woman. She's just very
sarcastic and she likes making fun of people, pretty much. That's her thing.
Yeah.
And he has his little brother Raven, who is the biological son of Serotonin and Gale. And again, Raven, completely different character, needs a completely different explanation.
Raven is a gift to the world, and you can't say any difference.
He is amazing. Oh, I love Raven so much. So that's his family, pretty much. He has two people love to make fun of people, love to have fun, but also still at their core have a purpose. Still want to help Gale, pretty much. It's a family business, is what it really is. Yeah. The Resistance is a family business because it's just these four starting out until they start to grow and grow and grow later in the future.
Because even with the mischief of Serotonin and Raven, they still at their core want to rebel.
Yeah, they still. Well, even then, the faith is so oppressive that you can't really have fun without them crashing down on you.
All right.
I didn't get the friends.
Oh, okay.
What do you want first? Do you want love interest or do you just want friends?
Why not both? Come on, let's do this.
Okay. He has two friends. Throughout his entire life, he just has two friends that stick by him.
Yeah.
Grace and JoJo. Both women, mind you. Yes, I know. He's a man whore. Grace is just. He comes upon her being assaulted by the faith. She's about to be sexually assaulted. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And he saves her because no, you're not going to do that to a woman. First of all, that's just his first thought. And so he saves her, and she feels indebted to him because of it. So she follows him around like a little puppy dog. She's like 10 years younger than him. She's 13 at the time. So he sees her as like a really young sister.
Yeah, that's.
It's not. There's no romantic inclination at all. He feels no romantic feeling to her in any sort of way. That's his little sister. Yeah. That's what she grows to be, and she actually grows to be a really important part of the Resistance. She keeps everyone grounded. She just reminds everyone, we can't allow this to be grandstand like our enemy, because at that point we'll start to be corrupt just like them.
Yeah.
And JoJo is the character who comes into focus after Edahn's initial story is done. She starts her story because she is the one. Edahn helps with the resurgence, but she's the main one fighting against them.
I see.
And JoJo is entertaining because she's one of my happy-go-lucky characters. She doesn't really understand sadness per se, and it's strange because in this world, it's a very depressing undertone. I mean, in Lunalil, nighttime lasts for 26 hours and daytime only lasts for 8 hours. So when you think of nighttime, you think of a cold, depressing undertone. Yeah. And that's really what is prevalent throughout the entire trilogy for Edahn himself. But when JoJo comes along is when the world is basically reshaping itself. And I'm getting into JoJo. I shouldn't be getting into her. Basically, yeah, but she is his best friend. That is the one person he can always rely on. And love interest, I'm debating changing this. This is what is canon right now, but I'm debating to change it because it's actually really harmful to Edahn overall. In the end, it ends up okay, but it's harmful.
Yeah, it's a very harsh thing for him to go through. From what I remember.
That's Maslin Zink. And Maslin is a very cruel woman. She is a bug in the system, as Marvel the God calls her, because she can perform magic, and nobody should be able to. It's a 99.9% mortality rate for any normal person to be practicing magic, and Maslin can do it flawlessly.
Yeah.
So she's a true bug in the system. And she's an illusion mage. She can mess with your head, tear apart your mind. And she's sadistic. She's a psychopath, really.
Yeah.
And the only reason, and Edahn falls in love with her because Edahn has this thing. This is where his savior syndrome comes in again. He feels he can save bad people from themselves,
which is a harsh thing to try to put yourself through.
He can't help it. It's just in his nature. He sees the good in these mean, horrible people, and he wants to suss out that good, especially in women. So that's why he falls for Maslin, and Maslin, despite her resisting, falls for him. It's a very abusive relationship, though. It's very, very bad.
It's not something that should be romanticized, but
it's not.
It's a good story. It's still a good story, but like he said, he's thinking about changing it. But
because it's just cruel. The guy goes through so much. He doesn't need that kind of cruelty. I want to give him that one little. It fits the story. It kind of it goes with the story, but I can do a different way about it and still make it make sense.
Yeah.
I don't like being overly cruel to my characters. I'm like this asshole.
about that. But
Okay.
well, we move on. Throughout his lifetime, what is the most notable enemies he makes?
Marvel. Marvel is the living god of Lunalo. He is what the faith is built around. And he is actually a living god. He literally did create Lunalo. But after so long of not intervening and seeing how bad things were getting, Marvel stepped in.
Yep.
And he was the one who caused magic to be... You're pretty much killing yourself if you try.
Okay.
He's the one who organized the technology to be so oppressive that only the religious functionaries were able to get to the tech. And the normal people could not and had to live in squalor, basically. And people were okay with this. Yeah, people were okay with this because, you know, that's just how it was. He came in 600 years before Edahn shows up.
Yeah, that's a lot of time to build up a... What's the word for it? A dictatorship. That's
Yeah.
what that is. It's a religious dictatorship.
By every aspect. It really is.
Get the Pope and turn it into a religious state, and there you go.
It was a religious state at one point. Papal states.
Yeah.
Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not talking that. Anyway, so Marvel, and I guess you could call the Paragon Knights part of it, and the Faith.
In a way, you can almost say for a bit, Maslin is also kind of his enemy, but at the same time...
Yeah, she's more of a personal obstacle to overcome more than anything.
Yeah.
And if we're going to talk personal, he has to overcome a lot of aspects about himself.
Yeah.
Because as he goes on, he starts to get worried that he's just like the people he's fighting.
Yeah.
It starts to fester in his mind because he's doing some atrocious stuff just to hurt these people. So he has to fight himself and figure out who he is outside of battle, who he is outside of the constant war he's waging. So he's also an enemy he has to face. He has to fight himself.
Exactly. All right, next subject. What are his talents and how many does he have?
I hate you. This is throughout his entire life, I'm guessing, right? All right.
Yep.
His natural talent is learning. He's just a good learner. He's a quick learner. He picks up on stuff crazy fast. But another natural talent of his is just fighting. He's a naturally skilled fighter.
Yeah, so some people have what you call a high fight IQ, and that's a whole thing that you can get into.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty interesting subject, actually, too.
Yeah. I don't know much about it, so I can't really say anything about it. He knows more about the fighting aspects than I do. When it comes to Edahn, would you say he has a high fight IQ?
Definitely.
Okay. So, yeah, he's just and it's ironic to think about because he was never going to be a fighter. When he was a boy, he didn't think about being a knight. He didn't think about saving damsels in distress by swinging a little stick. He actually just wanted to go outside and farm. That's all he wanted to do as a kid.
Yeah, he just wanted the simple life. Wanted the simple life.
Yeah, he didn't have any of these grandstanding dreams. But anyway, back into the topic. So he has a natural skill for fighting, and it's just built on and built on and built on to where he's just proficient with almost every weapon you put in his hands. And this is in his prime.
Yeah.
When you put a weapon into his hands, he can use it. And but he gets most proficient with his shield and sword. And it's strange because he starts out using a quarterstaff. That's what he starts out using. And then he slowly shifts into the sword and shield as life goes on.
Yeah,
as he lets go of his father, because his father used the quarterstaff.
The quarterstaff is what was known in the medieval times as the first weapon for everyone to pick up because it holds a lot of the basis of other weapons.
And he got scary good with it. Yeah. And he still could mess you up really bad if you put one in his hands. And that was also the basis for why he used a double-bladed sword. Because he loved that style so much, even though it's an unbelievably unorthodox weapon and it's really, really difficult to use.
Yeah, the only way
and that's why he switches over to the sword and shield, because he realizes he can actually be more versatile with it. Because you really can be more versatile with the sword and shield. Good God.
As much as he likes that style, the sword and shield's a better tool for combat.
Especially when he starts to get into the enchanting of it.
Yeah. All right, anyway. Getting on to the next one. This will be a fun one. What's his temperament like?
Oh, Jesus. He's angry. Angry. Okay. Am I doing youth, young adult, mature here? Because I can do those real quick.
All of them. Just go through
it. Youth, he's angry. He's full of rage. All he wants to do is vengeance. He just wants to crusade. That's all he wants.
He wants to watch the world burn, basically.
Because the world is the faith.
Yeah.
So he just wants to watch everything be crumbled and come down to the ground. He doesn't want to watch it burn. He doesn't like fire. He wants to watch it all come down. So he's just full of rage, and that's the only thing he can usually think about. Young adult, this is when we get to the trilogy. He's still angry, and he still has a lot of stuff to work through. He's still dealing with that. But you start to see the more noble side of him. He's a lot more gentle, especially when it comes to kids. He's unbelievable. If there's a kid even in a hint of danger, he's off and ready to go. But that's beside the point.
Yep.
He's kind-hearted, sweet, and very loyal to an incredible fault, and stubborn as holy frickin' hell. Most stubborn character I have in my roster by far.
So he's got a very intense temperament. He's always very in your face.
He's always and he's not afraid to speak his mind. So yeah, he's always ready. This is how I feel, and this is how you're gonna know. You're gonna know how I feel. You're gonna know what my stance is, and that's it. And if you don't like it, go fuck yourself.
Makes sense.
Mature when he starts to get older. This is after the White, and the White is a very big situation that I'm gonna have to explain at some point.
Yeah. It's a bit metaphysical, so that'll be a more complicated thing.
It's not really metaphysical. It's just, okay, I'll explain it after when we get to that one. But after the White, basically, he becomes much more wise. He becomes much more patient. Because he was really an impatient person.
But that ferocity is probably still there, isn't it?
Oh, it is. If you can hit that ping, if you can hit that little spot, it comes out, but it's much harder to get to now. As a mature person,
it's like going from a stick of dynamite to a block of C4.
Yeah, it only goes off when you detonate. So that's basically what it is.
All right. On the next subject, what would you say his weaknesses are? He's got a lot of strength, but what weaknesses does he hold?
He's impatient throughout the entire trilogy of the story, which is where we focus most on Edahn. He's very impatient, and it gets him in a lot of trouble. He doesn't think things through at the time, but it also plays into one of his strengths where he's very good at improvising because of it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't land him in a lot of hot water.
Yeah.
He's very self-critical, and it leads to a lot of self-doubt, and self-doubt can actually hinder your physical abilities because you're not using yourself to the full potential if you don't realize that I can actually do better than this.
Yeah, if you hesitate, it's just going to choke you up.
Yeah. What else? His anger plays into his impatience. It again lands him in really hot water. His racism, because let's not try and play around. He's racist, but he's not racist towards specific race. So I guess it would be more he's prejudiced. That's the word.
Yeah,
he. Anything religious, no. He won't have anything to do with it.
On to the next one. What do you think is the kindest act he has ever done?
He's done a lot of kind acts, so that's kind of hard to narrow down. Saving Rickor. Rickor was a young 4-year-old little boy that was, again, about to be sexually assaulted. And by the faith, and he saves him. He actually does it against Gale's wishes because Gale says to wait.
Did you take some inspiration from the Catholic Church for the faith?
Shut up. No. Shush. We're not going to go into that. But he saves him, and then he takes him in. Rickor becomes his adopted son because he doesn't have a family.
That makes sense.
And he raises Rickor as one of his own. And that's honestly the kindest thing. He treats him just like it's his kid. He doesn't treat him like, oh, I'm your stepfather. Oh, he's not a mean, cruel stepdad. He genuinely he introduces him, this is my son. This is my son. There's no, oh, it's not biological. It's just, no, this is my kid.
Yeah, he's very hard set about it, and he's very decisive that it's...
Gale is actually, before Gale dies, he questions him about it and says, no, that's not your son, right? And he says, technically, I'm not yours either if you want to be that way.
Yeah.
That's my kid. And that's the kindest thing I can think that he's ever done for somebody.
Now, onto the other side of the coin. What's the cruelest act he has ever done?
Oh, shit. I don't like showing this side of him off. Because I love this character. Don't give me... I'm getting chills just talking about this character. I love him so much. The cruelest thing this guy's ever done, I would have to say, would be... accidentally killing a kid. He doesn't mean to. Let me be clear. He does not mean to kill the kid at all. Yeah. It's a complete accident. But it is the cruelest thing he's ever done. He was in the middle of a basically, as a resistance against a very large dictatorship, you have to run as a guerrilla force.
Yep.
And during a supply train that they were just trying to disrupt, he didn't realize they had kids with them that they were basically enslaving.
Ooh.
And one of the kids broke out in the middle of the fight. Edon's mid-fight. He's mid-instinct, and all he feels is something behind him. And he swings around and swings, not realizing that it's a little boy standing behind him.
Ouch.
And he kills him. And that tears him up all the way till he dies. That never, ever goes away from him. Because, as I said before, Edahn loves children. He's very protective of them.
That's something that's really hard to cope with.
And it was a complete accident. Like, that's, as he tells us, if he tells the story to anyone, they see, well, it was an accident. You didn't mean to swing that blade. Your instinct took a hold of you.
But the act was still done, and that's what tears him up.
Yes. So that is most definitely the cruelest thing he's ever done.
Next on the list, where has he traveled to? Where has he gone?
Everywhere on the continent, really.
Well, explain where he's gone. Explain his travels.
Edahn travels around a lot because, as I just said, as a small rebellion force, they had to be a guerrilla army. And as a guerrilla army, you can't stay in one place for too long. No. So they're constantly moving, constantly going here, to this city, to this city, to this city, to this little crap hole over here, to this little crap hole over here. So he travels around a lot as a teenager and as a young adult, and it doesn't stop there because as the resurgent pops up, there's little pockets all over that he has to go take care of. And even when he becomes king, he still has to travel all over just to make speeches, talk to these people, yada yada yada.
Makes sense.
So he visits almost everywhere that's on the continent he lives on. He doesn't go down south towards the Mire or towards the equator or anything like that. He stays on his continent. He never does any travel by sea.
And what's that continent like? Like, what's the landscape that he's traveling? What's the people like?
Well, there's a lot of different people. There's the Sirvu. There's the elves, because there are elves in this world.
Yeah.
So he travels through forests. He travels through mountains, and the landscape is actually, it's a lot like the United States is in that there's different areas. There's deserts on this continent. There's forests. There's mountains. There's plains. There's all kinds of different environments. There's a volcano.
Yeah.
There's ashlands. There's a part of the continent where nothing grows. So that's basically it. He goes through all these different environments.
All right. And what would you say is his greatest accomplishment?
Bringing the faith down. Because, okay, you have to imagine it. This is a dictatorship that's been ruling for the last 600 years.
Yeah.
This is a group that has its roots very deep into the continent. They dominate the. There are no real leaders other than them. They have puppet leaders, but that's it. So you have to. You're four people bringing this down, and they start to amass a following as their acts start to get more and more progressively bigger.
Yeah.
But still, bringing something down of this size and then continuing to keep it held down with a boot on its neck after you did. By that I mean his constant battling against the resurgence. It's a remarkable thing because
it's especially a lot for one person to handle because he is the main one that does.
He's the main one who handles. He's the figurehead. He brings the faith down initially, and even when the story shifts over to JoJo, he's still the figurehead for the fight. He's still the one making all the moves. And JoJo just becomes the focus because she's the one handling the big stuff, the big focal story points when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But it's one man. Especially when Gale dies, he has to take the reins, and Gale did take a lot of the credit for the entire time up until the point he dies. But Edahn is the one who defeated Marvel. He defeated a god. I forgot. He defeated a god.
Yeah.
And he's the one who brought it down by defeating him and making him disappear. He's known as the Godslayer for that reason, which I know is edgy. I know. I'm sorry. It just makes sense that they would name him something like that.
It's a title he doesn't want, and he tries to brush it off whenever he can. But
yeah, it's the same. It's the same way as when he becomes a king. He doesn't like being called king or your grace or your lord or anything.
Yeah, he came up from the common folk, and when the common folk are looking at you, treating you like you're some sort of god or something else
anything,
like that,
it would make him himself uncomfortable, while other people would be seduced by the amount of power that gives you, because power is a really corrupting force.
Yeah. And on our final bullets on this point, what's his death like, and what are the circumstances to it? How does he die?
Old age.
Old age?
That's actually he's one of my only characters that just dies from being old. He dies when he's 82 years old, and it's just his body can't keep up with it anymore. He can't keep going anymore. Along with the fact of what happened with the White. Now, I'm going to get into this real quick. It's going to be a real quick explanation. So, when Edahn defeated Marvel, he killed Marvel. And with Marvel dead, as I said in the very beginning of this, Marvel created Lunalil. So, with Marvel supposedly dead, Lunalil unmakes itself. And Edahn is trapped in something that's called the White, which is just an endless sea of whiteness. There's nothing. Just nothingness. And Edahn is alone in it. And he spends in... I have it at 60 years, but he doesn't know how long it's been because there's no measure of time.
Well, when there's nothing there, it's 1 second is literally an eternity. There's no point of relevance whatsoever.
Yeah, there's no physics. There's none of that. He's just in this realm, and he just wanders for so long. So by the time that Marvel was not dead, Marvel was corrupted by just power.
Yeah,
and Edahn purged him of it when he defeated him. So when Marvel reappears, Edahn has a long beard like Dumbledore, long white hair. He looks old, craggly, but he doesn't die. He can't die.
Yeah.
And he's insane. Dude, he's insane. Yeah. Isolation for 60 years that felt like 6,000 eternities. He's freaking insane.
Yeah, that's not going to leave you mentally intact.
Oh, it's bad when Marvel finds him again. And Marvel returns him to Lunalil, as it was made before, because the very first proposition is Marvel asked if he would like to help him make a new Lunalil, make a new realm, start all over. And Edahn says no. It's the first coherent thought he has. No. And then Marvel says, well, for what you did for me, what can I do for you? And Edahn just says one word: home. And with a simple snap of his fingers, Edahn's right back there. He remembers being insane. He remembers the entire time he was there. He's stuck with that memory. And it does cause problems.
Yeah.
But he's sane. He's not insane. He just remembers being that crazy. He remembers what the isolation did to him, and that's why he becomes much more wise. That's why he becomes much more patient. It's much harder to get that anger out of him, but it does cause exhaustion, and his body can't keep up with that amount of mental exhaustion. That's why he dies at 82, because a lot of people on this world live up to 150, 200.
Yeah.
For humans, elves live longer, obviously, but
Elven master race.
Elven master race. But he dies at a very young age, technically, because he was just getting into midlife. It was like he was 40. And it's just from the pure mental exhaustion of what happened in the White. And he just dies from old age because he's actually much older than he really is, because he did live for that long.
Because when you think about those 6 years, you added on to the life that he
lived within Lunalil. He technically lived for 142 years, which is about the lifespan.
Yeah.
But 60 years of insanity, that really weighs on you.
Yeah,
like, remembering going through that's a lot of exhaustion you have to deal with. And he just dies. He passes away peacefully. It's a very peaceful death, and the moment he dies, he meets Marvel again. And Marvel just asks him, if he wants to go back. And Edahn says, I've lived my life, just let me go. And he's gone. And that's not the entire story of Edahn, but that is the basics. And yeah.
So,
Hope you guys enjoyed. It was much longer than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I hope you made it through it. If you did, hello.
Hello, awesome. Thank you for listening to this. You guys are awesome. With that, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yep.
Later, my dudes. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the start to our creative podcast. This video is just first of many to come, so make sure you drop a like and a subscription below so you can keep up with all the fun. Later, my dudes!